High-end retailers, casinos, exclusive clubs, luxury cars. Singapore has become a playground for the ultra-rich. It has one of the highest concentration of multimillionaires on the planet. The perfect venue for a conference on global migration and wealth management strategies. An industry where the world's wealthiest can buy visas or passports from various countries in return for investment. A market with huge potential.
Although the industry is called investment migration, the reality is that most of the clients don't physically move. But if they need to, they can. And having a European passport, as the stereotype goes, is the ultimate insurance policy.
Dozens of countries, including Caribbean islands and members of the European Union, are competing to sell their citizenship or permanent residence status in return for investments. And Canada and Quebec were the pioneers of the entire industry.
Le Canada a quelque part une place un peu particulière dans le monde de l'immigration, puisque effectivement, le Canada, au fédéral ou au niveau du Québec, a été le premier au monde avec cette composante d'investir pour avoir la carte de résident permanent.
We still get a lot of inquiries about it. In terms of relocation, why do people do it? Education, healthcare, transport, security, and Canada ticks all the boxes.
But golden visa programs, as they are called, have become quite controversial in Europe.
En réalité, ces programmes permettent aux criminels et aux fraudeurs de blanchir leur argent, de se refaire une virginité et d'importer leur trafic au sein de l'espace Schengen.
In Canada, the federal government scrapped its Immigration Investor Program in 2014. It wasn't seen beneficial enough. Quebec became the only gateway to Canada via a golden visa.
In the past, certainly, we've seen criminals and, high-profile fugitives have used these schemes to get into Canada. I'm not saying that immigrant investors, by and large, are corrupt, but what I would say is that the corrupt, by and large, do tend to millionaire migration schemes.
What are the potential risks linked to the selection of these millionaire migrants? And what are the real economic benefits of the program? In Quebec, governments of all stripes have touted the Immigrant Investor Program since it was created in 1986.
C'est un programme qui, depuis l'année 2000, génère plus de 800 millions de dollars en retombées.
Vous savez qu'on a eu une rentabilité sur ces investissements-là qui était vraiment intéressante.
While politicians hail it as a success for Quebec's economy, as an immigration program, it's a whole different ballgame.
C'est pas un programme d'immigration, c'est un programme d'investissement.
We are now the leading firm with regards to citizenship by investment.
Lawyer Jean-François Hervé, one of the pioneers of the industry, says the failure to retain these millionaire migrants is well known.
C'est un secret de polichinelle que 85%, sinon plus, moi je serais prêt à dire 95% des gens ne restent pas au Québec.
Yet the creation of business ties between Quebec and Asia was one of the main goals of the program.
On pensait bien que les gens qui appliquaient sur ce programme-là s'établiraient chez nous, qui commenceraient à faire des affaires, surtout qui créeraient des liens avec leur pays d'origine. Et ça n'a pas été le cas avec les gens de Hong Kong, malheureusement.
Hong Kong quickly became the recruiting hub for those millionaire migrants, although most of them had no real intention of moving to Quebec. There is a lucrative Quebec immigration industry here. For each successful applicant, tens of thousands of dollars in commissions are shared by consultants, lawyers, and financial intermediaries. To be eligible, applicants must sign an agreement with a broker or a financial institution recognized by the Quebec government. According to a 2011 study, these actors shared a third of the program's benefits. This downtown Hong Kong tower is where the Quebec government was operating a business immigration office. For years, most of the program's applicants had to show up here for a screening interview.
C'est un bureau, on avait bien des problèmes.
Suzanne Etier was Assistant Deputy Minister of the Quebec Department of Immigration in the mid-2000s. Of all the overseas office she oversaw, the Hong Kong one gave her the biggest headache. especially when applicants were turned down.
C'était un bureau où il y avait toujours des pressions politiques, des pressions des consultants, ils demandaient toujours des revisions, ils intervenaient au niveau de la ministre.
Brigitte Van Coy-Tremblay led the Hong Kong office from 2006 to 2009.
Quand un bureau traite autant de dossiers, qui traite de sommes d'argent aussi importantes, c'est sûr que les intermédiaires ne vont pas rester passifs. Donc, il n'était pas rare que j'ai des pressions pour qu'ils puissent avoir un accès particulier au directeur ou au conseiller. Essayer de pouvoir influencer dans le sens qui les intéresse.
In 2005, Jean-François Harvey pleaded guilty to 5 counts of illegally lobbying Quebec immigration officials for his wealthy clients.
On a refusé de s'inscrire au registre des lobbyistes parce qu'on disait qu'on était avocat, mais on a enregistré de s'inscrire. On a eu une pénalité de 400 $ pour ça, si je me souviens bien.
In fact, Jean-François Harvey was fined more than $3,000 for these offenses.
Avez-vous déjà eu affaire avec Jean-François Harvey?
Oui, oui. C'était entre autres un de ceux qui plusieurs fois m'a envoyé ces lettres, disons, de plainte et que j'ai remis à sa place.
In 2005, the director of the Quebec Immigration Office in Hong Kong faced corruption allegations. He was the subject of an internal investigation that wasn't able to establish his guilt. He was suspended and resigned after 11 months in office. In light of allegations of corruption against the global golden visa industry, we went to Hong Kong to see what consultants and lawyers who recruit candidates for the Quebec program really say behind closed doors. To approach them without drawing suspicion, we created our own immigrant investor. We named him Mr. Chen. In real life, Mr. Chen is a chef in Hong Kong, but for the purposes of our mission, we turned him into a multi-millionaire from mainland China, CEO of a fictitious company, Jimbao, the Golden Leopard. We provided him with an email address, cell phone, an assistant, and a driver. The finishing touch, a Swiss watch and a luxury handbag. To be eligible for the program, Mr. Chen will have to make a $1.2 million interest-free loan to the Quebec government for 5 years. Mr. Chen will have to demonstrate he has a fortune of at least $2 million legally acquired, and he must also pledge in writing to want to settle in Quebec.
The requirement is that you disclose everything.
But in our scenario, Mr. Chen will say he does not want to move to Quebec, preferring to send his daughter to university in Toronto or Vancouver. He will admit his wealth has dubious origins. He'll say he owns a plastic bag factory, but the administrative documents were destroyed by fire. He will disclose that he's a loan shark and operates a pawn shop fueled by cash. He'll acknowledge that a significant part of his wealth has not been declared to Chinese tax authorities. We asked Montreal immigration lawyer Hugues Langlais for his thoughts on our fictitious character. Would he take Mr. Chen as a client?
My initial reaction would be, sorry, sir, but I just can't represent you. You have a side business that is not disclosed anywhere. There's no way you can come up with the needed evidence to support an immigration application under the investor category.
Hong Kong is a magnet for the newly rich from mainland China who come here to shop in the numerous luxury brand stores. Many of them also shop here to get passports or golden visas to other countries. How do immigration consultants and lawyers sell them the Quebec Immigrant Investor Program? That's what we hope to find out in our Operation Mr. Chen with the help of our fictitious millionaire and his team. As we make our initial calls, consultants tell Mr. Chen he can use the Quebec program to settle in Vancouver or Toronto, but he must hide his true intentions during the selection interview. It's true that Canadian law allows permanent residents to move freely once in Canada, but when they apply to the Quebec program, they must sign documents stating their firm intention to settle in the province.
If you don't abide by this intention, it is possible that the person be subject to some form of inadmissibility or a form of prosecution under the Immigration Act under false representation.
We get an appointment at Simard & Associates. Lawyer Sébastien Guimier has bad news for Mr. Chen.
If he's over 50 years old and he doesn't have a good education, he's not even going to qualify at the first step. I don't know his age.
Guimier tells him he won't have to settle in Quebec, but warns him not to buy real estate in Vancouver before obtaining his permanent resident card.
It is only risky when you do it before. PR card of Canada gives you the right to live anywhere. So this is why here it's super important to be careful.
Mr. Chen's assistant asks if he will have to buy a house in Montreal on his arrival, even if he won't live there.
A lot of people, what they do is rent an apartment for 3 months in Quebec here, and then they receive the card and then do whatever you want. But worst case, you can always give our office address or something like this. We tell our clients to rent an apartment because it looks better. If you give the lawyer's office, they might question, but we never got a problem. And to be honest, to rent an apartment for 3 months in Montreal, it's not a lot of money at this point.
即係通過咗佢就會 OK 咁嘅意思。
It also means that they don't have to actually live in that flat.
Empty is okay?
Empty is okay. It's a postal address.
He's even offering to use
and he's
the lawyer's
his address. So if, in order to comply for the intent to reside, you create addresses, you create phony living arrangements, then you do not meet the requirement of the initial intent to reside. And also you're participating to the fabrication of evidence for the purpose of meeting the obligation to reside.
In an email, Sébastien Guimier responded that he followed the law. He said someone's intention to live in Quebec could have changed by the time they came to Canada, and his advice to rent that apartment, that was just to have a mailing address to receive the permanent residency card in case the immigrant had to fly back to China while waiting for it. Quebec government officials who were tasked with selecting these immigrant investors at the Hong Kong office agreed to share their experience. We conceal their identities and replace their voices because of the public service employees' need for discretion.
À l'intérieur du ministère, personne n'en faisait mystère que de toute façon, les candidats ne s'installaient pas au Québec. C'est quelque chose qui était su, qui était assumé à l'interne, et on ne nous demandait pas vraiment de vérifier l'intention d'immigrer au Québec.
The program requires candidates to disclose all their assets and prove they acquire their wealth legally with supporting documentation, often quite voluminous files.
J'en ai déjà vu de ma hauteur, de ma grandeur, des dossiers, des chemises empilées puis empilées. Ça, y en avait.
Staff were assigned at 7 hours per applicant. They included reading summaries, conducting interviews, and writing reports.
Les semaines de travail pouvaient être assez lourdes, 60-70 heures par semaine.
Faire ce travail de diligence, ça prend du temps, et on ne l'avait pas ce temps-là. Pour auditer une entreprise, des comptes financiers d'entreprise ou des transactions boursières ou même bancaires, ça prend plus que 7 heures par dossier.
These officials who worked at the Hong Kong office between 2010 and 2017 said that many applicants submitted dubious files.
Les dossiers étaient mauvais de façon générale. Je vous dirais plus de 50% des dossiers. Quand on les regardait, on avait beaucoup de questionnements, beaucoup d'interrogations.
C'est un programme qui a beaucoup de failles, qui permettent à des gens qui ont des activités peu recommandables, voire illicites, de finalement blanchir des fonds par l'entremise de ce programme et s'acheter une citoyenneté à bas coût.
In many cases, the applicants' responses during the interview raised serious doubts with these officials.
Ce qui nous cachait beaucoup, c'était leurs avoirs et la source. Comment ils ont investi dans une entreprise, comment ils ont investi dans une propriété.
Ce que j'ai vu, c'est une réalité dans le discours des candidats qui ne collaient pas aux documents. C'est beaucoup de documents faux, c'est beaucoup d'histoires montées de toutes pièces.
Lawyer Jean-François Harvey recognizes the existence of a false documents problem, but puts the blame on the Quebec government and its strict document requirements.
Dès que le Québec a commencé à trop pousser cette source de fonds-là, à vouloir avoir une source de fonds qui était parfaite, avec des reçus d'impôts qui arrivaient parfaitement, etc. Quand on est mis à pousser, ça a créé quoi? Ça a créé toute une industrie de fausse documentation.
Several officials we spoke to said that they were being pressured to accept more applicants, even in cases where there were suspicions of corruption.
En défendant mes dossiers qui étaient refusés, en mentionnant qu'il y avait de la corruption liée à un candidat, en justifiant auprès de la direction, on m'a déjà mentionné que c'est des choses qui existent aussi au Québec, puis que je devais y aller peut-être un peu plus mollo sur l'interprétation que je devais faire de l'origine licite des fonds.
Donc, qu'on ne devait pas être aussi exigeant, puisque de la corruption, il y en a chez nous aussi au Québec.
Oui, voilà. Donc, ça m'avait beaucoup choqué d'entendre une telle chose.
These former officials say they were pressured to increase their approval rate to help balance the department's books. Every immigrant investor pays $15,000 in processing fees. With about 1,900 files accepted per year, that's over $28 million in the government's pocket.
Ça se disait que le programme, c'était la vache à lait du ministère. On subissait beaucoup de pression pour justement accepter plus, pour être capable d'atteindre les objectifs financiers de l'année.
The Quebec Immigration Department admits there may have been an acceptance rate target in the past, but it's no longer the case. It says its screening process is efficient and contributes to the integrity of the program. In 2017, the Quebec government closed its Hong Kong immigration office due to cutbacks. Chinese immigrant investors can still be called in for an interview, but in Montreal, and those cases are much more rare. According to data obtained under Freedom of Information, the rate of applicants accepted without interviews has risen steeply in recent years from 14% to 75%. The Quebec Minister of Immigration declined a request for an interview. By email, his spokesperson said having the selection process entirely based in Montreal has allowed the department to ensure greater consistency in processing applications and to increase quality control. But we spoke to former officials who believe the opposite is happening.
C'est sûr qu'on accepte plus d'immigrants qui ont fait de la fraude, qui ont fait de la corruption, tous les crimes financiers possibles. C'est sûr qu'en faisant ce changement-là, les cas de fraude rentrent beaucoup plus facilement qu'avant.
How far are immigration consultants and lawyers ready to go to sell the Quebec Immigrant Investor Program? We continue our hidden camera investigation in Hong Kong with fictitious Chinese millionaire Mr. Chen and his team. Our next appointment is with Globe Visa Group. This immigration consulting firm based in Hong Kong is one of the top recruiters of millionaires for the Quebec Investor Program. Once again, Mr. Chen is advised not to reveal to Canadian authorities that his real intention is to settle outside the province of Quebec. When asked about the origin of his wealth, our fictitious millionaire admits he's not in good standing with Chinese tax authorities. The consultant tells Mr. Chen not to declare all his assets when applying to the Quebec program. She advises him to transfer problematic assets to a company registered in the British Virgin Islands, a tax haven.
接手係合法㗎嘛。
咁但係佢就唔使申報晒所有嘅資產嘅，
即係佢唔需要全副身家，即係全部擺晒出嚟嘅。
Mr. Chen also admits his wealth has dubious origins. He tells her he's a loan shark and he operates a pawn shop. The consultant offers a ready-made solution for difficult cases, the creation of a second identity.
我哋都有做過更加即係灰色地帶嘅客戶嘅。
咁係點處理㗎？灰色地帶。
如果佢過唔到資產審查或者過唔到嗰個冇犯罪咧，咁佢就直接買護照㗎啦。嗱，我哋做緊有7個護照嘅，而家。係。咁呢啲都係合法同埋入咗落嗰個移民法案嘅呢啲護照都係合規合法嘅護照嚟嘅呢啲。咁有2本就係歐盟護照，咁另外有啲加勒比海嘅，咁加勒比海有5本。嗰啲唔得，嗰啲就加拿大。係啦，嗰啲咧就係純粹係攞一個身份走佬嘅啫，即係有咩事或者係將筆資產隱形，即係譬如話你係陳生，咁你改做叫李小龍，咁你可以用呢個李小龍嘅身份咧。同埋呢個護照呢個身份去 hold 呢啲嘢咧，其實係查唔到你㗎嘛。即係我哋有好多高資產客戶都會即係咁樣做咯。
It's definitely a clear suggestion to defraud the system. So here we're creating a second or a third identity in order to avoid disclosing information that could very well hide so many things. So many things, and you have as good as an imagination that I have to see what can be behind this.
In a letter, Globe Visa representatives say that Mr. Chen would have had virtually no chance of being selected as their client. Globe Visa says major Caribbean citizenship programs do not include a change of identity. But the firm's own website boldly offers to provide clients a new identity to the Caribbean island of St. Kitts and Nevis. The last stop of our Hong Kong investigation is at the Harvey Law Group, the firm founded by Quebec lawyer Jean-François Harvey.
So I understand that he wants to apply the Quebec Investment Program.
They meet Sue Guetta, who has reassuring words for Mr. Chen.
My boss has been doing this business for 25 years. This is the business that we do. He's from Canada, so don't worry.
When Mr. Chen says he does not intend to settle in Quebec, the Harvey Law Group rep tells him that all he needs is a residential address in that province.
What is the main goal? Is for Toronto? Yes. Okay, so you need the address in Quebec to show that you are a resident there. But then where you go is entirely up to you. And he can...
We show this hidden camera footage to the owner of the firm, Jean-François Harvey.
Ça aurait pu être fait pas mal plus habilement que ça. Ça aurait pu être expliqué aux clients qu'ils devaient avoir l'intention de résider au Québec. Ça, j'avoue, c'est une erreur grave, ça, sans hésitation. Je dois quand même souligner que ce n'est pas une avocate que vous avez dans la salle, c'est une simple paralégale.
When our fictitious millionaire says he doesn't wish to declare all his assets to the Quebec authorities, the law firm's rep doesn't see any problem.
You want to disclose the minimum possible, right? Yeah. Okay. Yes, it's possible.
She too suggests using Caribbean islands to hide part of his assets, thus hiding them from both Quebec and Chinese tax authorities.
So the Caribbean passport also gives him a new TIN number, so a tax identity number. So that could be useful for him too. One of the Caribbean countries does not have a treaty with China, so you get a new tax identity, but you don't need to declare to Chinese government of those assets.
As for Mr. Chen's shady assets, a clear advice, don't even declare them.
He doesn't have to mention the pawn shop at all. If he has enough from the company to allow him to be approved for this, why he needs to talk about everything else that he has.
So some of his money is not very convenient to disclose.
I'm sorry, whether, it's normal. We have a lot of clients like that. It's actually really normal.
Because he's just obtaining those money by guanxi, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not. I'm not a tax official.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a lawyer to process for immigration.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Alors, un, elle se présente comme avocate.
Oui, c'est grave, ça. C'est contre nos propres règles internes aussi, là. Ça, je vais devoir prendre des mesures, il va sans dire.
Et deux, elle dit que pas besoin de tout déclarer, on peut cacher le pawn shop, le magasin de prêt sur gage.
Écoutez, vous m'ouvrez les yeux aussi, là, quand même. Là. Je vois que il y a des choses qu'il dit qu'il ne devrait pas se dire. Mais d'un autre côté, il y a un processus au bureau aussi. Ce client-là aurait rencontré un avocat ou au moins on aurait commencé à processer le dossier. C'est-à-dire qu'on aurait vu les trous dans le dossier.
After our interview, Sugeta was fired from the Harvey Law Group. Lawyer Hugues Langlais also teaches immigration law.
It would be illegal or could be found illegal, what she's suggesting, yes.
He says Jean-François Harvey could be held accountable for his employees' remarks, according to the Quebec Bar Association Code of Ethics.
She's under the authority of the law firm. She must abide by the rules and the regulations of the Quebec Bar. But you cannot, and certainly cannot, suggest the commission of something that is wrong, like avoiding to disclose assets that needs to be disclosed under the immigration program.
Here are the results of our Hong Kong investigation. Of the lawyers and consultants we contacted, all except one advised our fictitious millionaire to lie about his intention to settle outside Quebec. And nearly half recommended not disclosing dubious assets.
Well, we have an immigration program here that is faulty, an immigration program that needs some serious redress. Maybe Quebec government should have done what the federal government has done back in 2014 when it abolished the program.
So you think the Quebec government should maybe just pull the plug on it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's too many people being deceived by this program.
What are the actual economic benefits for Quebec of the Immigrant Investor Program? We went to visit La Maison Orphée, a manufacturer of oil and condiments in Quebec City. The growing company is purchasing new equipment. Grants from the Immigrant Investor Program are funding 5% of the modernization project.
C'est toujours un peu la cerise sur le sundae, finalement, qui permet d'avoir un petit peu plus de liquidité. Quand on est dans une petite entreprise, qu'on est en croissance, bien, les liquidités, c'est toujours ça qui manque. Fait que c'est un bon moyen là, d'avoir un petit coussin. Notre entreprise est située à Québec. On est dans le domaine de la transformation alimentaire. Nous, on a eu la chance...
La Maison Orphée is the example chosen by financial intermediaries to highlight the success of the Immigrant Investor Program before a parliamentary committee in 2011.
Donc, pour nous, vraiment, là, ce type d'aide financière-là est plus que bienvenu et devrait être plus connu.
At the same table, one of Quebec's most renowned economists, Pierre Fortin, he also praises the program.
Ça donne un résultat assez incroyable que près des 2/3 de tous les immigrants investisseurs qui entrent au Canada sont accueillis par le Québec.
In a series of studies, Pierre Fortin writes that it is immigration that pays off with spectacular rate of return for Quebec that allows to create jobs at low cost. In short, it's a godsend. Here's how it works. The immigrant investor makes an interest-free loan of $1.2 million to the Quebec government, which is entirely refunded to him after 5 years. In the meantime, Quebec places those funds so they grow at market rates. The interest generated is redistributed in part to small and medium-sized Quebec businesses through Investissement Québec, the province's investment arm. Since the year 2000, these businesses have received $695 million. But the program is also a gold mine for financial intermediaries who submit immigrant investor files. During the same period, the government paid them $605 million in professional fees, almost as much as what was given in grants.
Moi, je voudrais d'abord dire une chose au sujet des intermédiaires financiers.
Financial intermediaries, including National Bank and Desjardins, funded Pierre Fortin's studies of immigrant investors. Mr. Fortin has declined our request for an interview because he says that he has not worked on this subject for years. He referred us to the study's co-author, economist Pierre-Emmanuel Paradis.
Au dernier rapport annuel d'Investissement Québec, on parle de 4000 emplois au total qui sont liés directement à ces contributions-là.
But when we took a closer look at the data, we noticed something surprising. Investissement Québec doesn't finance more than 10% of a project, but the figures published in its annual reports count 100% of the jobs as if they were created or saved by these projects. The impact on job creation appears 10 times higher than it actually is. Investissement Québec tells us this is its standard operating procedure, but that it does not count all these jobs as attributable to its involvement. This is not what economist Pierre-Emmanuel Paradis was led to believe.
Créer ou sauvegarder ici, c'est attribué à l'ensemble de la valeur du projet. If they're calculating it this way by accounting for all the jobs, of course, it inflates the job creation numbers.
By 10 times.
It's not the right way to do it.
Alors, mesdames, messieurs, bonjour.
And according to Quebec's Auditor General, Investissement Québec does not follow up to ensure that jobs promised have actually been created.
Quebec, a place that needs dynamic people who are eager to contribute to its growth. Find out more about Quebec and its Immigrant Investor Program.
These immigrant investors could bring new blood to the Quebec business community, but in reality, very few immigrant investors actually start businesses here in Canada.
If they simply come in and then go through the paperwork, give us some money for small businesses and then leave, much of the economic impact is lost and of the social impact too. And so this is something that really needs, I think, addressing, number one.
Also, the program's revenues have gone down significantly because they depend on interest rate, which have hit historic lows during the last decade. To counter this, the government recently increased the amount of the loan immigrant investors must provide. But according to Pierre-Emmanuel Paradis, this won't be enough. One of the defenders of the program now believes a major reform is needed.
Canada has a lot to offer in terms of quality society, strong economy, peaceful country, and we have the right to ask for a sizable contribution in return. Let's get the contribution that we deserve and we should have, making sure that we prioritize families who are going to stay in Quebec, etc.
The majority of Chinese millionaires who entered Canada using the Quebec Immigrant Investor Program settle on the West Coast in Vancouver. The program has received negative media coverage here because it's been blamed for contributing in part to the sky-high real estate prices.
The Quebec program has been the biggest component of millionaire migration, wealth migration here in Vancouver and in Canada. And that's a huge component of what's propelling property prices. You look at properties that are worth, $5-6 million. That's not to do with local incomes. That's to do with foreign wealth and foreign incomes, and a big component of that is the Quebec Immigrant Investor Program.
Ian Young is the Vancouver-based correspondent of the South China Morning Post, a daily published in Hong Kong. He's been investigating these millionaire migrants for years and the role of the Quebec Immigrant Investor Program.
I think the Quebec Immigrant Investor Program is a scam from start to finish. And I think that everyone who's involved in the program knows that. I think that includes policymakers, the people who facilitate it, and the immigrants themselves. I mean, they know that it doesn't serve the purpose that it is supposed to serve.
Just one example, Beijing millionaire Zhao Jingli was granted permanent residency through the Quebec program. When she and her family got their official landing in Canada in 2006, they didn't even bother flying to Quebec.
Well, they arrived here in Vancouver, and only 10 days after they arrived, they left. And then after that, for the next 6 or 7 or 8 years, their actual presence in Canada was minimal.
Then Zhao Jingli returned to Vancouver in 2014 for her sons to be educated in Canada. Her husband stayed in China to keep his law practice going. This is commonly known as a satellite family. She bought this $5 million property in West Vancouver, a 5-bedroom, 7-washroom house for her and her 2 sons.
It's a prime way of parking your money. A lot of these immigrant investors simply want to get money out of China. They want to put it somewhere that is not in a bank account that is easily traceable.
She bought 2 luxury cars. Vancouver has become the North American capital of luxury cars because of the demand from the Asian millionaire market. Last year, Zhao Jingli had to appear before the Immigration and Refugee Board because she did not live in the country long enough to renew her permanent resident status. She was asked why she did not settle in Quebec as she should have. She told the board about a short visit to Montreal and that, not knowing French, it would have been too difficult for her to live in Quebec.
She mentioned going into a gas station and being appalled that the people spoke French. And they couldn't communicate with her in English. Now you'd think that would be, reasonably common knowledge amongst people, that if you're going to move to Quebec, that the people in Quebec do in fact speak French.
In 2016, Zhao Jingli paid only $69 in income tax. Today, her home is worth nearly $8 million. We tried to contact her several times, but she declined our request for an interview.
One of the most ridiculous things about the Quebec Immigrant Investor Program and millionaire migration in general is how little money these people are declaring once they get here to Canada, and how little income tax they're paying. They're paying less income tax in many cases than refugees.
One of the main reasons the federal government scrapped its own immigration investor program in 2014, the very low income tax revenues collected from these migrants. In the end, BC and Ontario have to foot much of the bill for the expenses related to these migrants, but without any of the financial benefits received by Quebec upon their arrival.
While Quebec is taking the money, it's Vancouver that's footing the bill for these ancillary costs, like the cost of education and health, and roads and things like that.
Donc nous, on prenait l'argent, puis eux s'en allaient ailleurs. Est-ce que c'était conscient? Mais je pense que tout le monde le savait. Au ministère, tout le monde le savait bien. Il faut qu'il y ait un courage politique pour changer ce programme, pour que les gens restent.
British Columbia has taken steps to try to reduce the influence of foreign capital on the Vancouver real estate market. Will Montreal see a similar phenomenon one day? Early signs suggest that property speculators in mainland China are already starting to take more of an interest in Quebec's largest city.